Hello once again, my name is Clive Mono Mukundu, and welcome back to yet another program which I call Monolio Re-Bik. This is where I take a classic song, especially from the Zimbabwean old school, and I use artificial intelligence to remove all the vocals, and then I put in my own instrumentation, my own interpretation. Kana wambunzozve madhara asingadi kusarira patechnology, I'm one of them, so I'm making use of artificial intelligence. This is also a way of documenting our music, bringing it to the new generation of listeners and music fans. On this note, I would also like to encourage Zimbabwean artists to document their history. Take as many videos as you can, take as many pictures as you can. Right now, as we speak, it's very difficult to research on Zimbabwean music history because you don't have pictures, you don't have videos, you don't have documentaries online. We should be having a documentary on Mukadota, on John Chibadura, on James Chimombe, and even to look for pictures. My pictures here, most of our yesteryear artists, they are very difficult to find. So I'm encouraging all artists in Zimbabwe to please document your stories so that the future generations to come will not face the same problems that we're facing right now. The song that I'm doing today is by a group known as the Great Sounds. It's a group from the 60s, and it had some iconic members. The leader of the group, or the lead vocalist, or the guy who wrote the song that we are doing today, goes by the name of Pius Makokowe. And the band had other band members, the likes of Elias Banda, Grant Ndowa, Daram Karanga, who was a trumpet player, Moses Kabubi, who was a keyboard player. I also once played with him some time, I think around 2012, but 2013, but he's late. And the other member of the group is the late Jethro Shasha. Those of you who don't know, Jethro Shasha is considered as the best drummer to come out of Zimbabwe. He's the drummer who went to South Africa with Louis Mhlanga. He's part of the group known as Music Air Africa. He also ended up playing for the likes of Ray Piri, Yuma Sekela, and a lot of other artists. If you know Semataure, he was inspired by Jethro as well, and he's somebody who contributed a lot. His name is all over the music industry, especially if you look in our music history. The song we are going to work on today was composed by Pius Makokowe, as I mentioned earlier, and it was one of the earliest hits from Zimbabwe. If I'm not mistaken, it could be in the top 5 first hits, because the first hit that I remember was Skokiano, which was first recorded in 1951 by August Msarurwa and the Cold Storage Band, and this one was recorded in 1969. According to Professor Fred Zindi, this song was recorded by Gallo, and the producer was Crispin Matema. Crispin Matema is the father to Witness Matema, who works at ZBC, and right now he's working for Classic 263. So it was recorded as a single. The other side was a song called Koni, and the song that we are going to do today is called Anopenga Ane. Anopenga Ane simply means she's crazy. There was a time when there was a popular catchphrase yainzi kuseri kwa koni, ukaita zvinabasa ngonzi amuziwe anorwara nekuseri kwa koni. The song was a single, so it had 2 sides. The first side was a song called Koni. The second side was Anopenga Ane. So if someone says is acting like the flip side of Koni, it means you are crazy. That's how the song affected popular language that time. The song had a rumba feel, and the reason is that time rumba was the in thing. As you know, in Zimbabwe, we've always had foreign genres that dominate a certain period of time, from the time the music industry started in Zimbabwe around the 1930s. In the 1930s, the music that dominated Zimbabwe was country music and jazz music. Artist from the States called Jimmy Rogers. is the one who inspired a lot of one-man bands in Zimbabwe. They later on created a genre which we later called Masganda. The likes of Jacob Mungu, John White, Signora Jackson Chinembiri, if you know that genre. But the good thing is they ended up creating a unique genre of their own. We also had jazz bands of the Bantu Actors. The Bantu Actors was the very first band in Zimbabwe, according to Zimbabwe Township Music, a book written by Miss Joyce Jenji Makwenda. The period between 1940 and 1950, we were influenced by American big band jazz music. The most popular artists from America at the time were artists like Count Basie and Duke Ellington. So in Zimbabwe, we had our own version of those American artists, and the biggest band at that time from Zimbabwe was called the Black Evening Follies. At one time, it had 25 members, so the bands had to be very big. Then from the 1950s to the 1960s, we had quartets and trios. That was the in thing that time. Doe Fayangwe, Doangari, Danso at that time here. The Zimbabwean versions of those trios, we had groups like the City Quads, the Cool Four, the Gay Gaites, and so forth. From the 60s to the 70s, we had an influx of Zaire and Rumba and South African Simanji Manje. They were at peace at that time. Then the period from the 1970s to the 1980s, that period was dominated by rock and roll. And the Western groups that influenced Zimbabwe, Jimi Hendrix, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Boston, and other groups from the Western world. So in Zimbabwe, we had our own versions of those groups with the likes of Dr. Foot Sewage, Manu Kambani, IQ. It were a lot of rock bands that time. Rock Nduyanga Fire time, and they used to have rock festivals. From the 80s, we had reggae music. Bob Marley had come to Zimbabwe. From the 90s, we had rumba music. Remember the times of Kanda Bongo Man and so forth. From the He influenced music that we called urban grooves. It also included some reggae music as well. Now we have people copying Amapiano from South Africa and people copying Afro beats from Nigeria. So there are three main reasons why Zimbabwe has always been dominated by foreign music. When the first missionaries started preaching in Zimbabwe, they demonized traditional music, Zimbabwean traditional music like Mbira. All those types of music were deemed to be pagan and Zvimashavi, Zvimadimoni and so forth. Since Zimbabwe is mostly dominated by Christianity, a lot of people started frowning against our local types of music. But if you look at European history, they also had the same issues. The harp, the organ, and the sitara, which is the ancestor of the guitar, they were all used in pagan worship in European countries before Christianity. In the African townships, they had installed some loudspeakers all around so that they could disseminate information easily. And in between the times, they used to play foreign music only. They used to play jazz music. People started calling it civilized music, you know, self-hating, those civilized. So because of those three reasons, people started admiring foreign music more than local music. In 1961, there was a group called the City Quads. They recorded an album. The album was called Music in the African Township. It had 12 tracks. And there was a song which was called Lizofika Lini Ilanga. And that song was a very political song. The government that time became very paranoid of music coming from Zimbabwe because Zimbabweans were becoming very politically conscious. So it was safer to flood Zimbabwe with music from South Africa and music from the DRC, which was not political, and also music from the Western world. So from the 60s, there was a huge domination of music from DRC, from Zaire, Simanji Manje music from South Africa. In psychology, they've got what they call the mere exposure effect. What it means is the more you listen to something, you end up liking it. So paredo pangu tanga warizwa music yoku DRC, music yoku South Africa, music yoku America, and everybody started liking the music. That's why you notice that every country around the world, they've got airplay quota laws where they forbid music yokunze munyika mavo, so that they promote their own music. According to the Herald in 2011, there was an artist called Mura Nyakura. He really got frustrated with the way foreign musicians were getting airplay on radio, and with the way they would come to Zimbabwe and take all the money, and Zimbabwean musicians would be relegated to second or third position or to non-existent musicians. He put his saxophone down and said, you know what, I'm quitting music because all the attention is going to foreign artists. He is quoted to have said something, I'm going to read it. Local musicians had to humble themselves by playing foreign music and imitating foreign performers. That was the only way to survive, because that is what the people wanted. When Zairean bands arrived, Zaire is DRC, they easily got high-paying contracts in the city hotels. Local bands had never had chances to play in those places. When South African musicians started touring this country in 1968, they performed in stadiums because no hall was large enough for the thousands who gathered to see them. Like I said before, it's a psychological issue. People accept. And when we say, no, to get the music, I got boss and to research coach car, Mombe. When it's supposed to be the other way around, Mombe those who found out the coach car. Who can pound something, do you want order, then do you want request. So you cannot order no to power each because do you want kumbira but do watanga to apa church chawago request a church. So it's a very complicated. Today's song is called Anopenga Ane by the Great Sounds, composed by Pius Makokowe. Like I mentioned earlier, I will remove all the instruments using artificial intelligence. Anopenga Ane Anopenga Siana. Then I'll start playing everything afresh. So let's go. Anopenga Ane Anopenga Siana.
Monolio Studio, the harmony of quality and professionalism.